Right, so a little bit of a bonus feature on the maintenance front on the Emonda. After changing the pads on a previous video, I decided that the brake fluid's never been changed since it was new, and it's a couple of years old now, and SRAM really recommend that the fluid should be changed every 12 months. So it's a job I'd normally put into a bike shop, but I thought, well, the kits are pretty cheap on Amazon, so let's give it a go myself. It can't be too hard. There's a million videos on YouTube already, about bleeding SRAM brakes. So I picked up this little kit from Amazon, round about £23–24, including some .4 fluid and the various adapters. So let's get it open. We'll see what's inside the package. So first of all, we've got some quite comprehensive instructions from the guys at Epic Bleed Solutions who create this kit. Should come in handy. Got a pair of nitrile gloves because the brake fluid is pretty awful stuff. It's quite corrosive and you don't want it in contact with paint and fingers and whatever. We've got some .5.1 brake fluid. Probably costs an awful lot more if you get it from a bike specific shop rather than a car parts outlet. We've got a couple of syringes with screw on ends. We've got 3 syringe attachments, so most types of brakes are covered. We've got the attachment for the SRAM bleeding edge. It's got the 4mm hexagonal socket on it, and we've got 2 of the threaded type. So if you've got the older style caliper where you thread into the caliper, and a threaded adapter to go into the actual lever itself. We've got a spacer block, so you pop that into your caliper, so you keep your pistons retracted. Looks like that could be a neat little disc thickness gauge as well. I'll have to try that one. And to give you an elastic band, probably so you can just keep the syringe vertical against one of your fork legs. And lastly, in the bag we've got a little Torx 10, and that will undo either the bleed point screw or the caliper bleed screw if you've got the older type with the screw-in connector. All in all, quite a comprehensive little kit, and a lot cheaper than the items from SRAM or Park. Be interesting to see how we get on. All right then, we've got the bike on the stand. I've already removed the front brake pads and put a brake spreader in there to push the pistons all the way back, and the same on the rear one, but in the rear I've just got the bleed block that was supplied with the syringe kit. I've already loosened off the bleeding edge fluid port on both calipers. Made sure everything's nice and clean so that nothing can get into the system. Let's get the syringes on. Okay, so we're going to prepare the syringes We've got one set up with the bleeding edge adapter to go in the caliper end, and the other one set up with the threaded adapter to go in at the lever end. We're going to put around about 3/4 full on the lever end and about 1/4 full on the caliper end. We've got the clamp open, and we're going to draw some fluid into that side. You just need to let the fluid fall from the pipe, separate any air bubbles, and gently get ready to catch any drips that might spurt out the top, but slowly expel the air from the cylinder. And we want it to just start coming up out of the end of the pipe, just there, and then we can close the clip, and we've got no air in the lever syringe. Pop that to one side. Now we want about 1/4 in this. Roughly there, and we'll do the same again, where retract the piston to empty any fluid out of the pipe, a few taps to get any air bubbles to the top, and again taking care not to squeeze all the fluid out. You see any air bubbles rising out of the filler pipe. Now you can see we've still got an air bubble in there, so we'll repeat that process again. I think that was my fault for not having it vertical. There we go, it's coming out now. And snap the pipe shut. So, starting with the front caliper, we're going to make sure that the bleed port is just finger tight, and we're going to push the bleeding edge adapter in so it clicks. I don't know if you heard that little audible click there. So now we've got the first syringe fitted into the caliper using our T10 Torx key. I'm going to undo the bleed screw, carefully removed it, making sure that the O-ring is still in place. And we're going to screw on the lever end just like that. And currently both syringes are clamped off. Now we need to open the clamps on both syringes and we need to carefully force the fluid from the lever down into the caliper. Right, so we're going to carefully push fluid through the lever and then as that comes down, and we're going to slowly force the fluid from the lever down through the caliper expelling the old fluid into the lower syringe. Then we'll stop just short of empty on the top lever. And just push back and forwards to just take any air out. Lock off the bleeding edge port at the bottom. Clamp our pipe. And we'll just pull a vacuum at the lever. Which should draw any little bubbles up. Apply a little bit of pressure. And same again. So we can see there we've got more fluid in the syringe than when we started. That was approximately a quarter full when we started, so we've displaced the rest of the fluid and we can actually see an air bubble just in the top of it. Now with the bleeding edge port locked off and the syringe pipe clamped off, we can pull sharply backwards on the bleeding edge adapter and remove that. We can just nip up the bleed port, keep that airtight. Torque spec is 1.5 to 1.7 Newton meters, so we're approximately there. And click, click. I'm just going to use some water to clean any brake fluid from the caliper. Because you really don't want dot brake fluid anywhere on your paintwork, and especially not on your pads and rotor. And we'll put the rubber sealing grommet back in. And just for good measure, I'll give it a bit of a clean with some professional brake spray. So moving back up to the top of the lever, just give it a few more goes, pumping a vacuum. There's actually some floating particles that you can see in the syringe. SRAM do actually mention that in their literature and say it's assembly grease and it's nothing to worry about. But better out than in is what I say. So we can lock off the pipe. We get our bleed screw at the ready. Unscrew the syringe, pop the bleed screw back in. Just a wee nip on the bleed screw. And pump the lever up, make sure we've got some pressure. It's feeling good. Take off the paper towel and we'll give that a spray with some water as well and dry it with a shop towel. That should be the front brake all done. I've emptied the syringes into a container ready for the correct disposal, and we need to prep the syringes again for the rear caliper. So once again, around about a quarter full for the lower syringe. Hold it vertically so the pipe drains. All the bubbles come out. Just keep a bit of paper towel over the top as we slowly expel the air. So the air is coming up the pipe now. And we clamp the pipe off. Repeat the process for the syringe, but we're putting about 3/4 in this time. Again, holding vertical, pull back slightly so that we draw any fluid out of the pipe. Taking care not to spray brake fluid all over the place. Slowly raise the plunger to expel the air. And then once we just get to the point where it's coming out, we can clamp the pipe. Put the lid on the remaining brake fluid. And that's our syringes prepped ready for the rear. So let's get the syringes on. Once again, we're just going to crack open the bleed screw to make sure that we can access it. And then we're going to take our syringe with the bleeding edge, pushed for the click. And now we're going to prep the rear lever. So once again, some absorbent roll around the lever just to keep things clean. Remove the screw, making sure we've got our little O-ring. Pop that safe. Thread in our lever adapter. And we can open our syringe. Right. We'll open our bleeding edge port, approximately 1 turn. Open our clip on the syringe. And hopefully when I move to the front of the bike now and push the fluid from the top, you should get a clear picture of the fluid being expelled from the rear. You can see the syringe filling. A couple of bubbles and particles coming through the hose. Just slowly letting the lever draw some of the fluid back through before pressurising it up again. Making sure all the air is pushed through and trapped in the syringes. And that should do us on that one. Rotate the pipe and close off the bleeding edge. And we'll just lock off the syringe to stop any coming out the pipe. When we disconnect it, pull straight back and we're off. Slightest of nips on the screw, and then we'll torque it to 1.5. See, click. Give this brake some water. Quick blast with brake cleaner. That'll drive any moisture away. Evaporates off really nice. And then we put our bleed plug back in. Right, we're back at the lever end. We're just going to draw the plunger up, create a little bit of a vacuum, make sure there's no air coming out, apply a little bit of pressure to it, lock off our syringe, we've got our bleed point screw at the ready. Take the syringe off, bleed screw in, little bit of a nip, quick wipe to remove any displaced fluid. And a good going over with some water. The water will neutralise any corrosive effects. So we'll just give the lever a bit of a clean and a dry. And we've got good pressure at the lever. Job done. Right, so we've got both calipers bled. We've got the new pads back in. lever hood's repositioned, just need to get the wheels back on. Right, so the wheels are back on, pads are pumped up a little bit, not ridden the bike yet to bed the pads in. So there we go, fluid replaced in the SRAM force axis system.